dear listener, and welcome to 10 Laws with East Forest. This is a podcast series that chats with people who live intrepid lives outside the box. We explore through these conversations things like consciousness, technology, spirituality, nature, ecology, just new ways of living and new stories, and really whatever else comes up along the way. It's just a way to talk to interesting people that I get to meet and interesting people that I've yet to meet. It also will include music and meditations. We'll figure this out as we go along. But if you do like this podcast, please give it 5 stars on iTunes. That makes a huge difference in people taking the leap to give it a listen and explore it. You can also share it with your friends, social media, of course, and always just sending any support to East Forest in general by streaming the music, coming to a live show, especially sharing it out there with the world makes a big difference. You can say hi at info@eastforest.org, send in your questions and your comments, and you can also see on that website, eastforest.org, about events around the country and all that kind of jazz. And if you're super inspired, feel free to send us your hard-earned money via PayPal at info@eastforest.org. You can also do that through Venmo, but you'd have to find Trevor Oswald on there. I don't know if I'm the only one. So you would run the potential risk of sending your money to another guy named Trevor Oswald. You ever done that where you go on like Facebook and you look up your own name and you discover that there's like half a dozen people out there in the world who have exactly the same name as you? I did that once, and what freaked me out about that is that I kind of thought the other people looked like me a little bit. And they were all tradesmen. Like one was a fireman and one was like, I don't know, a baker or something. But we had this strange connection, and makes me think that I sort of thought about starting a Facebook group for the different Trevor Oswalds in the world. But, you know, I send them an invite, hey man, your name's Trevor Oswald. And he'd be like, what the fuck? Like, okay, you know? And I'm like, yeah, we can just like talk about what it's like to be a person with that name and vaguely look alike. Well, anyway, I didn't do it because it's clearly a stupid idea. Anyway, my guest for today is Lorenzo Hagerty. He is the guy who is the host and started the Psychedelic Salon, which is one of the longest running podcasts, period. I think it's been around 14 years, and we talk about that. And he hosts talks on that podcast, like most of them older talks from like Terence McKenna, Alan Watts, great psychedelic thinkers, philosophical thinkers. And it is an amazing resource of a website, or podcast and website. If you haven't dug into that archive, it's a true national treasure of counterculture thought. And it's something that served a really important purpose for me when I was sort of coming to my spiritual age of just hearing these seminal thinkers. I'm obviously someone who connects to sound. So like if I could hear their voice and get into these long talks, you know, hour, some of the Terence stuff is hour 2, 3 hours. There's some of them are quite long, and they're amazing poetry. So I encourage you to check out the Psychedelic Salon, and Lorenzo is a pretty cool guy. But before we get into that, I just wanted to share what I've been up to briefly, which is last week I've been in the studio here in southern Utah, and the creative process, like I've been digging my teeth into some new work, a new collaborative thing that I'm looking forward to being able to talk about soon. But the process is really what's interesting to me, because it has been a minute since I've been doing like strictly studio work. And it is very different than performing live or creating music through sort of a live setup. And it's so challenging, you know, like creativity and making something when it's sort of every day. You go through these waves, right? Where it's awesome, and then sometimes it's horrifically bad, or this is how you feel. And it could be the same thing that you're working on. You can be really jazzed about it, and then the next day you just feel like it's garbage. And this is not new. You know, this is something at least I've gone through a lot with the creative process. So there's definitely this meta awareness about that this is going to happen, but it doesn't make it any easier when it does. And the reason I bring this up is because I believe that our creative potential and the ability to create things is a lot of what makes us human, right? That's something next to like our sense of humor that is very uniquely to what it means to be Homo sapien. And I also think it's really, really integral to feeling like a full human and having the fullness of your existence. So I encourage you to find ways, if you don't have them already, to exercise this creativity. Because I think you'll find that even by free writing or things like cooking, these are all really creative acts. It's exercising a certain muscle in you, and you're going to feel better about being alive in the same way that when you do some kind of physical exercise, there's usually some kind of benefit afterwards. But the thing here, the trick is that before you do this, every time there's probably going to be a kind of resistance. And that resistance is always going to be there. I don't know why, what evolutionary purpose it serves that we have this part of ourselves that says, nah, you can check your email first, or there's no point in that. You should just go run that errand first. Or forget about that thing. You can't listen to that. And it's like going to battle. One of my favorite books for motivation about this is The War of Art. Stephen Pressfield, I believe, is the author. I've given that to many, many people, and it's a very short book you can read, but it speaks to this core message of resistance and how overcoming that is something you go to war with every single day or every time that you're sitting down or standing up, whatever you're doing, that creative act. And I'm telling you this so you don't think that you're unique in that form of resistance. You might think that's a kind of laziness or it's a kind of self-sabotage. And I guess it is, but just know that that's part of the experience. That's part of being human. It's something I face every day. And like the thing I'm proud of is the discipline and the will I do to work through that. I'm not taking credit or proud necessarily of the creativity itself, like what comes through. I mean, that's the larger muse. That's the universe speaking through us, right? Through the creative act. But what you are responsible for and what you can be proud of is just doing it. Okay, the labor, not the fruits. So you don't have to worry too much about what you're creating or how good it is, all that judgment shit, because that's going to come up anyway. You're going to judge it. That's your mind. I mean, that's just the way it works. But just get in there and find something to do that's creative. I know that going in the studio for me, even when it's hard, there's a part of me that feels good, like I just ran a mile. I ran an artistic mile. And even if it's 30 minutes or 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, it's still worthwhile. So there you go. That's my public service announcement for you on creativity. So let's get into this. Mr. Lorenzo Hagerty. He's a super sweet guy. I think I speak in the podcast a bit about how he and I met, which was super fun. And there's some synchronicity to that too. He's just a good guy. So here it is. Lorenzo Hagerty. Enjoy. Well, thanks, Lorenzo, for joining me. I'm super happy to see you again, be able to talk.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So how are you?
I'm good. You're out there and you're north of San Diego, right?
Yeah, North County. Yeah, just south of the Marine base here, Camp Pendleton.
So nothing's on fire. Everything's okay. Everything's perfect. It's back to perfect San Diego.
72 and sunny, like always.
Man, I'm jealous. I moved to southern Utah actually, and that's not where I am right now. But I definitely became a sun worshiper. I get it.
Yeah, I grew up in the Midwest, and I love Ireland, but after all this time I've spent here in Southern California, I can't get away from it.
I just couldn't take it after growing up in the Northwest of the gray and the rain. It was too much.
Yeah.
I feel like we're plants too. We need sun. We need vitamin D.
Well, that's what they say about the weather in Ireland, that Ireland has 9 months of winter and then 2 months of really bad weather.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, it's been a minute since you and I got to talk. I think I stopped by your place a couple years ago, and I was talking yesterday about you and how we crossed paths, and I was thinking back on it, and there's a bit of synchronicity involved. I don't know if you remember, but back in 2009, I emailed you because I was a listener, an avid listener to the Psychedelic Salon, and I wanted to introduce you to my work, which was just starting with East Forest. My first record had been
Yeah, I think I played a cut of yours or something on one of the podcasts, didn't I?
You didn't just play a cut. You played the entire record.
Okay.
You played the entire record. It was 44 minutes of music on your podcast, which I was just amazed. And I was remembering this. I'd forgotten about this, and I was remembering this the other day. And I was like, that was so amazing. And I also remember when I emailed you, you said something like, maybe it's the second time when I stopped by to see you, but you had kind of gotten off email for a while or kind of pulled out of various modes of communication because you felt there was too much.
Yeah.
And you had said something like, I don't normally check this, but I for some reason today I was checking it and your email popped up first one. So yeah, hey, stop by. Let's say hi.
That's happened to me 2 or 3 times where just, because I sometimes get overloaded and just quit for a while.
So you back on? Where are you at? What's your status right now with?
Oh, things are pretty good right now. That,
all right, good. You're plugged in.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to thank you, and I wanted to talk to you because, when I got into the Psychedelic Salon, it was a really profound journey for me. And I know a lot of people have had this trip where they get into those ideas, they get into that space. And for me at that time, I had not heard a lot of these elders before. I had not heard a lot of these ideas before. And it was profound. And I found that there was something really poetic about a lot of these recordings being done on tape recorders and analog. And then here it is, the internet, digitizing everything, democratizing it, and putting it out there on a medium like podcasting. And I know it's been a really big journey for a lot of people. I mean, you're still going strong with that, right? How many episodes are you at?
I think 570 plus about 30 some of the Salon 2 track too. So yeah. we're up to around 600 podcasts. Yeah,
that is so cool. So I never really asked you how that whole thing got started. I mean, how does someone end up with that kind of material? And I know you've always been a little bit ahead of the curve in the internet and technology and having an interest in that. But what spurred you to even start that?
Well, first of all, I was in my mid-50s before I heard any of these people talk myself. So, I was a real late comer to the thing.
That's awesome.
And then in 2003, my wife and I launched the Palenque Norte lectures at Burning Man.
Right.
And we had Bruce Damer and Allison and Alex Gray and Eric Davis and Daniel Pinchbeck. And so I recorded them. But this isn't in 2003, and there was no RSS feed, no podcasting.
Right.
So I took these hour-long talks and I put them into little 10-minute files, and then put them up on my website because the files were so big. At the time there wasn't much to do with. And so then it goes up to in January of 2005. I'm at the Mind States conference in San Francisco, and a friend of mine says, "Hey, I'm going to start podcasting, and can I have use that stuff that you've got up there on the web?" And I said, "Sure, yeah." I said, I looked at it, but I don't have an iPod, so I didn't look any farther. And he said, "Oh, you don't need it. You can do it on your computer." So a couple months go by, and he doesn't have a podcast out, so I got a hold of him and said, "Hey, would you mind if I did it too?" And he said, "Well, first of all, I'm not going to do it now, and secondly, it's your stuff. Go do it."
Yeah.
So I put out a podcast in March of 2005 from a geek standpoint. I had no intention of doing this. And the only reason I called it the Psychedelic Salon is that for several years, myself and Wild Bill Radosinski in New York City and Nick Sand and Dr. Tom, we'd get together on Wednesday nights. We had this really secure, pre-Skype communication setup that we had. I geeked out. And so we'd been doing that. And so I thought, well, I'll just call the podcast the same thing. And I did a talk that I gave in 2001 at Mind States. And I didn't really have any intention of doing a podcast. I was geeking. I just
one of the first. It was it's pretty early in the medium, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in the first 3 or 4 months. And see what happened by calling it the Psychedelic Salon. It was the only thing in iTunes that had the word psychedelic. It was even before the Psychedelic Furs got their first things up there.
Well, I'm trying to remember if I found it because of that. I might have done some searching around, and I thought, oh, this is interesting, because there wasn't much out there.
No, and it was just pure accident. And so I kept doing. I did 2 or 3 or 4, and then I did. I just kept doing it, not at regular intervals, but I had 15 or 20 up there, and but over time, I guess it was almost a year later, KMO got a hold of me, and he says, "Oh, I love your podcast." And I wasn't keeping logs. I don't have any ads on my site or anything, because I don't want Google tracking all the people who download it. So it's a pretty clean site that way. But he says, the Dope Fiend and I are really happy. And I hadn't been listening to any other podcast, so then I hooked up with KMO and the Dope Fiend and
C-Realm podcast.
We had those years of it, and just by interesting coincidence, I've been doing these Zoom conferences on Monday night with my Patreon supporters, and a guy this last Monday came up. His name is Travis, and he actually came in from New Zealand on Monday night. It was Tuesday morning for him. He was at work, and he was at lunch hour or something. But he just moved to New Zealand about a year and a half before, because he was living in Germany, and it turns out he was at Dope Stock that the Dope Fiend had done. And so yesterday, I sent a email to Dope Fiend, and he wrote back this morning and says, "Oh yeah, I remember Travis. He was at the last Dope Stock that we did."
What a trip!
Small world. It just keeps bouncing around like that.
Dude, you're bringing up all these old memories. I remember the Dope Fiend. Around the same time, I was probably motivated by the fact that you had responded. I sent those guys my music too, and he played it on his podcast and talked about it. But I remember he got so high that he couldn't stop laughing while he's trying to talk. And so it's one of these like blunders where he's just like...
Now, was that the Dope Fiend, or was it...
it was on the network.
A ninja. Queer Ninja.
Yes.
Well, then I've got that. I saved every one of Queer Ninja's podcasts. I loved his shows.
He gets so high, he starts laughing, and he's like, I don't know. I don't remember who this is, but anyway, it's wonderful. Just listen to it. I'm like, just say the name. He never got it out. You're too stoned.
He started all his shows with "Easy Now."
It was funny, but
Ninja was really deeply involved in the Occupy London movement, and
was he?
I sort of lost touch with him after that, but I'm sure we could hook up again sometime. But yeah, that was a whole great thing with Dope Fiend and Queer Ninja, and what was that guy that?
Yeah, there was a couple of them.
A freaky guy that took over the thing that KMO had started.
Not the zombie podcast.
No, but anyhow, those were some good times, good people, and
there was. I don't know. That was all, as I could say, pre-2012 days, when we're all sort of like yearning for a magical wand to fix our problems, in a sense. But deep down inside, we're all like, "Hey, maybe." Yeah, that was an exciting time. That was actually the same time. So the same time I wrote you and was kind of getting into all this stuff and having my own spiritual awakening, I was reading some of the first books that got me into this subject was Daniel Pinchbeck's Breaking Open the Head. Mm-hmm. And in the back of that, I remember was a little web address. It was realitysandwich.com, which is still around. But so I remember getting into that website, sort of a psychedelic culture, counterculture thought magazine. And those guys were all located in New York City, which is where I lived. And so I became really good friends with the 4 of those guys who were running that. And they did their first retreat. I don't know if you remember, they used to do these reality sandwich retreats in Utah. And I went to the one in 2008, the first one. And now I moved there. That's where I live. I just moved there. Like, I mean, it completely shifted my reality. Those little things, you know.
From New York to Utah is a big switch.
Oh, yeah. It's well, it's from there to Portland to Utah, but it's been sort of these steps down to more and more nature, more and more expansiveness.
Yeah.
I also travel a lot, so it's not convenient, but it's a nice balance between being out in the world doing things, and then I get to retreat back into this beautiful space.
Yeah, well, that's why Bruce Damer has this little farm up in the mountains above Santa Cruz, but he's always right now he's in Asia for a while, and he's involved in conferences all over the world, travels a lot, so he loves to get back and get his hands in the dirt and just be in a quiet place without all the traffic and the noise. So
I crossed paths with that guy 2 years ago at this thing called Summit at Sea.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was talking there, I was playing there. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's pretty crazy. They get a giant cruise ship, the Summit people.
Oh, yeah, he's told me about that cruise. I know what
insane.
You're talking. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
He was not hard to miss because he went full Burning Man at this thing. And a lot of these guys are like tech people and New Yorkers in LA. They're kind of, dressed in their black. They're there to get drunk and have, meet people. But then there was Bruce Damer, like in his full playa regalia.
He's really on a roll scientifically. He and his research partner have introduced a new theory about the origin of life, which is really taking hold at universities around the world, and a bunch of Nobel laureates are on board with it.
Really?
And he at the same time, NASA has this mission going out to try to capture an asteroid, and that was originally he wrote the first paper on that. That was his idea.
Yeah, I think I remember him talking to you about that. Like some of his
both of those things are going on right now. So he's getting a lot of attention. Plus, he's on the team that is picking out the landing sites for the next Mars rover, which I think is going to take off next year or something like that. So
which is totally fake.
He's in the thick of it right now.
Yeah, he's in Northern California, right? He's got doesn't he have a museum where he keeps old computers?
Yeah, he's got the DigiBarn Computer Museum, and not only are there hundreds, almost anything that you can have ever heard of, but they all operate. They all boot up. When he has a big event, they come out and all of those things are going. So, he interviews a lot of the computer geeks there, and most of it's online. I mean, he gets 30,000-40,000 visitors a day at that thing. So it's
that's cool
thing. But it's in this old barn. The barn is over 100 years old. He put a new roof on it a year or so ago. But
I was going to say, is it watertight? Yeah.
Oh, it's a fire hazard too.
Those old computers. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but but Bruce has his hands in a lot of things, and he and I and Bernardo Kastrup did a 3-person Zoom meeting the other day. I'd introduced them over a year ago, and they'd been exchanging email, and this was the first time they got together. And so now we've decided that we're going to start doing trilogues online and maybe invite one other person. So
yeah, awesome.
When he gets back to the country, we're going to get that a little better organized. So that's... he's still has time for us, even though he's up in the stratosphere there.
Yeah, that's cool. So you've got the Psychedelic Salon still keeping you busy. One thing I've always wondered is, like, will you ever run out of Terence McKenna talks, or is this sort of like the keep coming down from the cosmos?
Well, a couple of months ago I had run out. I was down to my last 3 or 4, and since then I've gotten. I've got 7 right now that just came in a couple of weeks ago. I haven't digitized yet.
And you hadn't heard them before?
No, I've not heard them before, and I don't think they're probably on the net, because at Esalen they didn't make public all of his talks. Some of them are in cassettes that say student version, unedited student version only. And so I'm hoping that this is something that hasn't made it out there yet, but we've got that. And then I've got people just send me that stuff all the time. I've done over 270 McKenna talks.
Wow.
And
it's amazing there are that many.
Ralph Abraham gave me his box of tapes of all their trilogues. And so that's what really kind of kickstarted the thing. And then there have been all kinds of different people who have sent me boxes of tapes that they've had, like the Grateful Dead fans or McKenna fans, followed them around and recorded things. But there's other stuff. There's the Palenque Norte lectures every year that I've, that I haven't been able to go to Burning Man for a while, but Frank Nuncio now is doing recordings and sending them to me. And in fact, this year I'm going to do up a bunch of McKenna talks and introduce them and the things we've already heard, but some of the McKenna classics. And late at night in the Palenque Norte tent, they're going to play them, and so I'll introduce those, and we'll have a little
cool
thing for the burners there. So we got that going on, and I finally decided to start doing. I'm going to speak at another conference. I retired a number of years ago, but
it's fun.
Darren from Orcas Island came on. He's the one that also was involved in the Oracle gatherings that I did, and he's one of the producers of Lightning in the Bottle.
Yep. And, Do-Lab guy.
Yeah, he came by here the other day, and boy, Lightning in the Bottle, they've got like 150 speakers lined up. I mean,
it's a pretty big festival. Yeah, I think it's 15, 20,000 people.
But he's going to start he does the Imagine Festival up on Orcas Island every year, and it's gotten, it's a limited size thing. But he's going to do the first Imagine conference next March on the island. And he's got a hotel that can, they're going to be able to take about 300 people. It's going to be limited, of course, but I'm going, Bruce is going, and his connections with Lightning in the Bottle are going to, help him get sort of a varied thing. It's not only going to be tech and drugs. It's going to be, culture or society. And I know he's going to try to get Alex and Allison Gray to come. So should be a really, Palenque kind of conference in that it'll be a small and everybody will be eating in the same place, and should be fun. So.
Well, it's beautiful up there too.
Oh, if the weather was better, that's where I would go once my granddaughters go to college. But the weather it's like Ireland up there.
Yeah, but did you know that the American islands are pretty shit weather, and that the Canadian ones are the Vashon Islands, I think they're called. Some of them are in the rain shadow.
Yeah,
like that Victoria and Sequim, Washington. Some of them capture that. They get 12 to 15 inches rain a year, something like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting up there. Unfortunately, Orcas is not one of them.
Not one of them, no.
But
they have probably like a 1 month summer or something like that.
Yeah, well, we're going to go in March, so we'll see how it is.
Oh, well, it's still pretty mystical. It'll be a nice break from Southern California.
Yeah, I won't mind it at all. Actually, I like the rain.
Yeah,
but not every
day. To live there. So, I'm curious what you think. Podcasts are more popular than ever, especially audio ones, and I know why I like them. And it kind of excites the imagination. There's an intimacy to just the audio, kind of placing yourself inside the conversation. It's convenient just to walk around or have it and listen to. But where do you see this medium going? What do you think is the next step in this? Do you see it moving into or do you see it just kind of continuing on for a while?
Well, for me, it's really kind of a step back because when I was young, we didn't have television in our house. And so I grew up on the radio and, theater of the mind. And on Sunday afternoons when my dad would be down in his basement workshop and I'd be down there holding the end of boards he was cutting, we always had the radio on with the shadow and stuff like that. So I grew up on that. And, I don't really see it going away. It's kind of interesting. I've been doing it. This is my 14th year now. And so a lot of people that were listening early on have drifted away. And a lot of my good friends haven't heard the podcast in 3 or 4 years. They just kind of burned out on it. So, but on the other hand, I keep picking up new listeners. And so I think that it could be just sort of like a podcasting is you get into a genre like you do with music, whether it's punk or rock or whatever. And you will have waves of listeners. And, I've had a few people come back that hadn't heard it in a number of years, and they kind of burned out on Terrence McKenna, but now they like the new stuff I'm doing with Salon too. And so, and I'm the same way. I used to listen to a whole lot more podcasts than I do now.
Mm-hmm.
And, now I'm kind of checking out others, but I'll go out to Joe Rogan and download the ones of people I really want to hear about. And same with others. I've gotten more selective in that I don't listen to the same podcast every week like a lot of people do with me, But I know that when they get kind of burned out on the Salon, they'll go away, but they might come back for a story or two. And and then after a couple of years, it'll be new. And I think as long as we want to keep doing it, I've considered doing a number of things. That's why the Salon 2 is something that I've started out with a couple other young people doing it, because I know eventually I'm going to burn out and get tired of doing it. And so I'd like to keep the thing going, mainly because, at one point in time, I was out in the end of the line, didn't know anybody who was involved in the psychedelic community, and I felt, like I was an oddball or something. And a lot of young people come to the Salon that way. And not just young people. I've had people in their 40s and 50s that said, I did some psychedelics when I was in college, and then I forgot. Now my family grown and gone, and I want to renew that whole connection.
Well, it's a safe place, safe way for people to connect with that information.
Yeah.
It's private. They can really dive in, explore it. The freedom of that thought process, the freedom of their own consciousness. It's sort of a private conversation they're having with all these ideas and these talks.
Well, and I'll tell you something else that I'm trying to get going. Hasn't gotten too big yet, but I do every Monday night I get together on Zoom here with my patrons from Patreon, and then on the first Monday of the month I open it up to the whole Salon, and we've never had more than about a dozen people so far. But eventually I'm going to get Bruce and Bernardo in a regular monthly thing. We'll combine the whole thing. I would like to see, because with this technology, we can get several hundred people together, and you have ways to raise your hand and ask questions. But here's, to me, the big thing is, I can go up to my name here and right click, and when it says rename, I'll just put San Diego after it, so that people know where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. Well, then, if we were going to do like a weekend conference or a conference with 2 speakers one night or something like that, taking a break 10 minutes between the speakers, there's a function here where it says, it's not on my screen, but it'll be on your screen since you started this meeting, where it says breakout rooms. And we've tested this, and we found that putting 3 people in a breakout room, just with a click of the button, you could take 1,000 people and split them into rooms of 3, where they get to find the others and they get to know each other. And if you got your city up there, it's been kind of interesting because, last Monday night we had somebody from Uruguay and also somebody from New Zealand. One guy in a coffee house in New York City, another guy up in Silicon Valley. So it's been interesting, and over time, I think if we build up an audience for things like this, and maybe get several podcasters together who talk about it, we want to do these things for free. That's the whole thing, and to help people know they're not alone. So if I'm a 19-year-old kid sitting in the middle of Kansas somewhere, and one night I can talk to you, I wind up in a breakout room with you. I mean, this is a big deal to the people, especially who are isolated.
Well, do you remember when Evolver started making those spores, and they had the spore meetings localized in cities where they'd meet at the same day on the same subject, but other than that, it was pretty open, and it was a way to meet people in your community. That since sort of folded, but yeah, I love the idea of just sort of helping to foster community, new connections. When you do the breakout rooms, though, is it a bit random on how it connects people, or can you do it based on location?
You can. There's a lot of different ways to do it. To me, I think random might be the most fun way to do it. Let it go. And you can set any number of breakout room from 2 to 20 or whatever you want.
Right.
But and this is just stuff we're experimenting with and getting a feel for. So over time, and it not just a salon, but over time, these kind of online communications where you can have video too are at least the next best thing to being there.
Oh yeah, for sure, and it's a lot easier. But
now video blogging, or video podcasts, I should say. I don't see how they're going to really fly. Although I guess but even with your iPhone and you're always looking down. I think the podcast, because people can drive their UPS truck or they can commute to work and stuff like that. The podcast in the ears is still, I think that's going to be around a lot longer than some of the other tech.
Well, there's a perseverance, as you said, to radio to now. I mean, there's a reason why audio, I don't know, there's something very personal and intimate about it, especially when it's in your ears and it's just you and that program. Yeah. Well, also something I know a little bit about your history and your path that maybe others don't know as much. I just know the broad strokes, but would you consider yourself a baby boomer?
No, I'm before the baby
generation
boomer.
Before?
Yeah, I was born in 42.
Okay, so, almost, yeah.
That's true. My brother was born in 47. He was a baby boomer, yeah.
But I know you were in the Navy and you were a lawyer, and like you said, you got some of these ideas were introduced to yourself fairly later in life, or at least what you consider later in life. And I'm always curious, what it is that cracks the nut. Like, what is the thing, or what practices or experiences were the ones that sort of help push you over the edge? For me, it definitely was a lot of things, as it is with everyone. It's a confluence of events, but psychedelics certainly played pretty powerful role in that, and because I was a tough nut to crack and I needed to sort of almost actually see and experience something larger than myself like that I couldn't argue with, and then I had to just go make sense of it. And I was fortunate in a lot of ways to have some good and positive experiences and start to find information in elders, including information through things like the Psychedelic Salon or these conferences like Reality Sandwich retreat that I did. But what was it for you? Can you connect those dots?
I have no clue. I went to undergraduate school, got a degree as an electrical engineer, and I'm working as an electrical engineer, going to law school, and I get a chance to sail on a square rig sailing ship with an old sailor hero of mine. Wound up working as a stuntman in the movies. Then the draft was after me, so I joined the Navy, became a naval officer. No planning so far. I was just reacting to things, So I get back involved in law school, or I go through law school, get a law degree, and I found out I hated being a lawyer. I had problems of my own, and then people were bringing me their problems to solve.
So I can't imagine.
It really sucked. So I wound up getting into business, and I was still kind of geeky, and that's when personal computers were coming out. And so I started a personal computer company, and we designed and built some, and we private labeled others. And when IBM came in, they crushed us like a bug. And so then I became a motivational speaker. And during the whole thing, that's when ecstasy hit the street in Dallas, MDMA. And up to that time, I was, 42 years old and never even smoked a joint. I was clean, and because, I had a law license in Texas. You get 30 years to life in Texas for a single joint at the time.
Good God. Wow.
Yeah, but ecstasy was legal. And so long story short, I became a drug dealer. Had to leave the state of Texas and went to Florida and did various and sundry things. And
all right, hold on, time out. At some point in time, someone gave you your first hit of legal ecstasy at the time. So, I mean, who did that? How did that happen?
Yeah, the whole story, you go to the psychedelicsalon.com, and on that front page, there's a 30-minute video interview that's titled Confessions of an Ecstasy Advocate. And I'll give you the headlines there. I'm running a computer company in Dallas, and it's a multi-level company, you know, like Amway of computers. But we'd made the front page of Wall Street Journal. I had a 4-color picture and a story in Forbes magazine. You know, I was a high flyer. But of course, IBM came in and crushed us like a bug. But during all that, my friend in Biloxi, Mississippi, who is also a lawyer, called me and said, "Heard of ecstasy?" And long story short, didn't even realize this until years later, but Dallas is where ecstasy hit the street, where it broke out of
no kidding.
The psychologists who had been using it out here on the coast. And so a friend of my wife's was a model in town and ran with a fast crowd. So I had lunch with her. She hooked me up, and one thing led to another. And I became, evangelical about it. It was like the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And so I started turning everybody on. Well, long story short, this lawyer businessman in Dallas starts turning people on. And next thing I know, I'm moving, 100, 200 at a time and getting a discount. My computer company was in trouble. So by then I'm moving a few thousand units a week, and so I'm funding my computer company with all this. It was just crazy at the time. And then they made it illegal. And so by then we needed the money. We just, we stopped for a little while, and then it became legal again, and we went back. And long story short, when they finally did make it illegal the last time, they started rolling up some of the people I was involved in. And so I decided time to leave Texas.
You got out.
I got out of Dallas, yeah. So it was and my computer company by then had closed. They'd forced us out of business. IBM just crushed everybody. So, but it was a great time. It was high flying, and I got to, it was 1980. We outgrossed Microsoft. So,
welcome.
but Bill Gates was a businessman. I was a carnival barker.
Yeah, right. So, what was your next psychedelic experience? When did you break into, shall we say, a true psychedelic?
Well, it took a while. I'd been doing ecstasy, a lot of ecstasy. I really abused it. I had no peers. I didn't know what was going on, and it took me almost a year before I had my first joint. Finally, I had a little cannabis. But
you really were obsessed.
Just what?
You said you really were obsessed. You were just going for one thing. You love it. You're going to go.
That's it. Well, just before I left for Florida, a friend gave me a sheet of window pane acid, and I was still in that whole just say no kind of mentality where I was a little concerned that acid I would never come back again. Maybe I haven't, but I had that for months and months before I finally gave it a try. And the woman who was my wife at the time, we had a long talk, and I said, this might be it. I might go completely crazy and jump out of a window and like with all the stories. But I had an incredible, wonderful, beautiful time. And from there on, there was no looking back. And through this connection in Dallas, I had access to a lot of experimental drugs. And I got a hold of this one thing. I didn't know what it was. And by then I'd been corresponding with Rick Doblin, and that was even before he started MAPS. and I got a hold of this one thing that was just awesome. And so I wrote to Sasha Shulgin out of the blue, and he and I started a correspondence then. So I got to know him even, I guess it was more than 10 years before I met him. It's just one thing led to another, but I realized very quickly that I'd been lied to about everything. And I knew that this is something that's not for everybody. It's really for a small percentage of the people. I would doubt if even 15% of the world population would be attracted to some of these states of mind. But on the other hand, the internet has come from psychedelic experiences.
Yes.
If everybody who has taken acid more than a half a dozen times in their life had never been involved in technology, we wouldn't have personal computers or the internet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of scientific breakthroughs. There's a lot of people who talk about how they use it.
Kerry Mullis, who learned how to sequence DNA. He got that insight on an acid trip. In fact, the guy that discovered DNA, one of the co-discoverers,
the double helix, right?
Said he did it on acid. So this stuff is important, and I think that we're sort of at the very bedrock of learning, and a lot of people are learning how to use it a lot more than has made the press. I was microdosing in '99, and now that's making mainstream press. I had a friend of mine who has disavowed me for like 20 some years. He's a born again Christian. Called me and asked me the details about how to go about microdosing.
Oh, really? He's come back around, huh?
Yeah.
I already saw it on CNN. He's like, yeah. Well, that's ridiculous. Yeah, I think mushrooms is my gut's telling me that's going to be the next wave now that marijuana is becoming quite, cannabis legalization. I hear it's happening in Canada. It's probably a matter of time just based on administrations in the U.S. And I know they're trying to get it on the ballot, or it's going to be on the ballot in California, I believe. I know they're trying in Oregon. There's a group there, and for medical use.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that started that was new to me until I actually read about it was microdosing mushrooms. And now I've talked to several people who have been doing it. And
I've tried it.
Yeah, I haven't done microdosing in a long time, but in the last 6 months of final draft on the Spirit of the Internet, I microdosed during that whole period, and found it really, really worthwhile. Before that, when I was writing code, I microdosed a few times in big projects, But I'd never even had thought about microdosing on mushrooms. Just something never occurred to me. And the people that I've talked to that have done it swear by it. Say it's really a good.
It's worth trying. For me, it was hard. I found more success when I tried microdosing with LSD. That was a better fit for my body. I mean, I think mushrooms and psilocybin is such a close ally to me spiritually, and it's been such an inspiration that I'm not able to even dip my toe in the water without just being in that space.
Well, see, that's the thing for me. These all have a little different vibe to them. And,
very much, yeah.
Mushrooms are cosmic, like that. Acid is more, I can write code on acid.
Yes, exactly.
Write text on acid. Ayahuasca is grounding, earth-centered, life lesson kind of thing.
Well, and it messes with my stomach, too. It's not something I'd want to take a shot of before starting my day. Yeah.
And then there's cannabis, which is like air.
Right.
You seen one of these little things?
What are these, vaporizer pens?
Well, I've got a 9 or 10 vaporizers. This is a PAX ERA. This thing is lighter than 2 joints. Okay, and on a single charge, 200 hits.
Is it liquid in there?
It's a little canister.
Oh my!
And it's hash oil. You can get it in all kinds of varieties. And there's no carburetor, no on-off button or anything. You just draw.
You're living the California dream, Lorenzo. You doing the CBDs out there, or you doing full THC?
Well, you can get it in CBD. That's THC. On top of that, talk about the California dream. I ordered it over the internet. I pay with a credit card. If my order is in by 6:30 at night, it's delivered by noon the next day. Delivered to me.
It's the future.
And I get a link where I can track the package.
Yeah, that's better than the weed dealers I had to deal with back in New York City, who'd maybe show up in a 6-hour window. And
hey, when I was living in Tampa before I moved out here in '99, I had to drive over to the dark side of town and get all this stuff with sticks and stems and leaves in it.
Oh yeah. God knows where it's from.
Real ragweed, but nonetheless, I was never without it.
Yeah.
So,
no, I know that. I know that.
And you're still a lot younger than me, so you'll get to where I am. The whole country's going to get here. There's no question about that. But I'm just glad I got there while I'm still in good enough health to enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm 75. I'm going to be 76 in a couple of months, and that's the only medicine I take. My dad, I think, died of mainly side effects from all the medicine they had him on.
Yeah.
And so I stay off all pharmaceuticals. I don't eat any junk food. We eat everything, we cook it ourselves. We try to avoid processed food, everything organic. So, and I exercise. I wouldn't, but my wife makes me. So, so, there's no reason I can't keep doing these podcasts at least another 5 or 10 years,
Hey, if you love it, do it. Yeah. I mean, do you
Have
feel
you been
that?
to Burning Man?
Yeah, I went in '07 and 2012.
Okay, yeah, '07. That was the last time I was there.
That was the one where the man burned on Monday night.
Right.
And there was an eclipse. I remember I showed up on Monday night, and within half an hour, it was my first time there, and everyone started running towards the center, and I'm just like, what's happening? Like, the man's burning. I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but I guess it's a big deal. Some arsonist burned the man.
That was a one-of. It's never happened before or since, and that was an exciting year.
It was disorienting because I quickly realized that was a useful piece of neon architecture to tell you where the center was at all times.
It really was disorienting. And after the burn on Saturday night, the first year you're there, you don't realize how disoriented you can get. So
right.
After the first year, you start looking at stars and stuff like that to find your way around. That actually, I'm planning to go back in 2022 and celebrate my 80th birthday, and Bruce will be celebrating his 60th birthday there. Cool. So we're both committed to going back for that one for sure. And so I'm looking forward to that. That should be a lot of fun.
I was at the Eclipse Festival playing some music this last year. That was a big one. It was about close to Burning Man size. And
Darren was talking about that. It impacted all of the festivals that year, because so many people went to Eclipse instead. But he said it was just an awesome event. He was quite impressed with it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the kind of guy who's like, I have torn feelings about a lot of the festivals. I'm more of an introvert, so sometimes it's hard for me to make it through the whole thing. But I certainly appreciate them. But it is pulling teeth for me. I sometimes would rather just be backpacking somewhere.
Well, you don't have to explain that to me because I have left this county only one time in the last 4 years.
Good for you, man. I don't know if I'd leave either.
I walk, a little over a mile over to my granddaughter's house and back, and see them every day, and that's the extent of it. I used to travel for a living. I cover a couple 100,000 miles a year, and I just really burned out on that, leaving on Monday, getting home Friday night or Saturday. And so I really enjoy, now with the internet, I can feel like I'm,
connected.
Yeah. And I've got so many books I want to read and I'm doing a lot of writing again. And so, I've got a lot of stuff to keep me busy. I've got all the cannabis I need. And so I'm in good shape.
I mean, all right. Do you feel that you were in similar jovial spirits earlier in your life, or is that part of your personality, or is it something you feel you've cultivated?
Well, now I am really in good spirits, but for a good part of my life, it was a lot of show. And I say this because, and you'll probably find out one day, I've typed up a whole bunch of my journals that I wrote in the 80s and 90s. And they're really pretty depressing. And so I'm not going to publish them while I'm alive because I don't want to answer any questions about it, But, you read them and you think, my God, how did he get, far enough? I like being alive, but I've got a wistful streak in me. I'm very melancholy. I'm Irish.
I'm the same way.
Yeah, and but some of my best writing has come when I've been in those down moods. Right now, I'm in such a good mood; it's really hard to do some of the writing I want to do. But I've got those journals pretty well all digitized now, and I'm going to put them in a blockchain with encrypted with a code to release. 20 years from now or something like that. So I'll be at least senile to answer any questions. So eventually I'll put it out there. And in fact, my last book I put out in the public domain because it's essentially financed by my patrons there. And so I'm going to start moving all the stuff I've already done and put it into the public domain too, and just leave it there. It kind of irritates me to buy a book written by Aldous Huxley when I don't know who's getting the royalties on it. He's long gone. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want people feeling that way about me, and I'm going to put all my stuff in the public domain. And I'm an old hacker. Information wants to be free, and you know that because you've been doing very similar things your whole life.
Yeah. I've been very committed to things like Creative Commons and just exploring about how things are always wanting to expand and flower. And well, you must have been introduced to. So you started the podcast 14 years ago.
I finished 13 years. I'm in my 14th year.
14th, yeah. I mean, just think how that alone has expanded your orbit.
Oh, geez. My father, my brother, and my mentor all died in their 63rd when they were 63 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I started the podcast when I was 63 years old. And so I've just started a whole new life, and it has become, a large part of my life that most of my old friends and colleagues have gone by the board, although a couple old college classmates have poked up in the last few months. I don't participate in Facebook. I dropped that many years ago. And I had like 3,000 friends that I'd never met, and they were tagging me in photos at places I didn't want to be tagged in, and I wasn't there. And so I thought, this is getting out of control. So I dropped it, I guess 7-8 years ago, something like that. But I still stay on Twitter because I announce stuff like that on Twitter, but I've got mixed emotions about social media, but I want to stay involved in it enough that I know what's going on.
Well, me too. I think we don't really quite understand what that's really doing to the fabric of our minds, let alone our culture, and we're diving in so fast. And just speaking from my own personal experience, I just didn't feel very good when I used it. Yeah. It was got real clear, and I just had to take stock in how I felt, and I didn't necessarily need to figure out why. And I noticed when I would take breaks, I felt better.
Yeah, but it's just kind of creepy when after a while. But that I had made contact with like my very first girlfriend from high school, and some of my family members, and when I dropped, I lost all that. I'm no longer in touch with any of my cousins. That old girlfriend,
like the old days, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd been like 7 years disconnected from the past, and somehow a couple of my old college compatriots have found me lately, and my second girlfriend from high school found me recently.
Well, screw the first, you found the second, yeah.
Yeah, so they're finding it through the Psychedelic Salon, actually. So,
man, yeah,
they can see what they missed,
Yeah, there you go. So when was it that you went out and did Rogan's podcast? Was that a few years ago?
Oh, that was in 2014.
It was? Was that the last time you left the county?
It was his podcast number 419, because he commented, I should have had you in tomorrow for 420. But
I was so happy he had you on.
We did 4 hours on there.
That's how he does it.
It was a good conversation. I've got to send him a copy of my book, because I put a copy of that picture he put of the two of us in the book when I talked about having done drugs with two celebrities. One was him. We smoked dope before the conversation. That's probably why it went on so long.
I'm sure it was really strong too.
Yeah. So I got to remember to send him a copy of that book.
Yeah, he's had some people on his show that I can tell don't smoke much, and they definitely take a puff there and they just go off, which is highly entertaining to listen to. But he definitely he must have a certain environment there that just makes people feel really safe.
Well, it's kind of a dark cave-like environment, and but he is basically self-educated to a very high degree. I mean,
he's a curious guy. He
is extremely intelligent and sharp, really quick. He understands stuff just like that, and he's got a terrific mind. I know that he's, I'm not into all the fighting and everything like that, but I understand where he's coming from and where he grew up. And, Matt Palenque grew up in a similar area, in the same part of the country. And,
South Boston or something?
What?
Is it South Boston?
Yeah. Palenque was in Dorchester. And, when he was 3 years old, his father tried to burn the house down around him, Palenque.
What?
Yeah. He grew up tough, let me tell you.
That's tough, yeah.
It's tough. So, growing up in that environment is so different than what I grew up in. And yet, like Matt and I are really close friends. And if I could hang around with Joe Rogan and be friends, even though we have different interests in something, that we still have a lot of stuff in common, and that's why he's so popular. I think he's maybe got the most popular podcast.
He is, yeah, he's definitely the big gorilla in the room of podcasting for sure. And it's his interests are pretty broad, but it's I get the sense that he hasn't done like a ceremony setting.
I get that same sense too. I never asked him point blank, but
I've heard many of his shows, and I've just sort of culling that from what I've heard him say.
Yeah.
And I would love to give him that experience. I really would. I think he's got some prejudice against it being too woo-woo or new agey. And I'm like, well, there's plenty of stuff out there offered that's very grounded. There's nothing to argue with.
I think he's pretty open. And the thing particularly about ayahuasca that I feel strongly about is that it will let you know when it's time for you to come. And I searched it out, vigorously for 10 years and couldn't find it, and all of a sudden it just found me. So
right.
And you've heard a lot of people say the same thing about that, I think. But it's fascinating because I haven't participated in a number of years now, but the circle I used to belong to, we had an ayahuasquero come up from Peru, and I would talk to him about it, and he says, we kind of got this message that it's time to bring it out of the jungle. And of course now it's just really prevalent throughout the Western world in particular. So
it's everywhere.
And it shouldn't be a surprise that a molecule that's in our brain would want to reach out to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a trip, DMT, just trying to figure out what it's all about. And it's absolutely fascinating. I like to think about the burning bush in the Bible too, and whether or not that was a DMT trip, because I believe it was a plant with DMT in it.
Whitley Strieber, who did the UFO contact thing, he was the one that became pretty famous about the contact. Probably about 15 years ago, he had a book came out that I heard a review of on the radio or something, and the part that they were talking about to me sounded like a DMT trip. So I got a hold of him and suggested that, figuring he'd just reject it out of hand. And long story short, he finally got in touch with Rick Strassman, who did the DMT molecule experiment. Right. And he and Strassman corresponded for a while, and he agreed, Strieber agreed, that there's a possibility that what he was experiencing was a DMT release from his brain.
It certainly seemed to be an
I thought that was very big of him to say something like that, because his whole career depended on being abducted. But in a recent podcast, McKenna just said that the whole point of being human is to be able to distinguish dreams from reality.
Well, that's an interesting comment.
Spin that in a lot of different directions, too.
Yeah, that kind of makes me chew for a while. Unless it's all a dream, then it's like, what's the reality?
Well, the scientists or mathematicians who have calculated whether or not what the possibilities are that what we're experiencing here is really inside some sort of a huge cyber computer, and this is all generated. Well, the odds of that being true are 50-50, and you can't prove that you're not.
What a cop-out.
So I've decided that since you can't prove we're not in some kind of computer simulation, and since I'm kind of geeky and write code, I'm writing the code to make my life turn out really good, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. I've got these granddaughters here. My kids and I are getting along well. I'm finding some old friends. I'm hacking the code pretty well. So
you've got a vaporizer pen that's the size of a pack of gum or something. A stick of gum.
Well, I can remember it. I'm funny. I don't know how this memory came back. You as soon as you did it like that, I can almost remember where I was sitting in grade school, and I don't remember what they were talking about, but I realized that we could just be like in a little bubble on a ping pong ball, some being played in another world. That's that whole intertwined telescoping thing. Is something that is so common in human thought, and I had that thought as a child, and then put it away. But when you come right down to it, we don't know what's going to happen after we die. The older I get, the less interested I'm in thinking about that, because I'm going to find out sooner I want to anyhow. And so I'm more interested in how I can enjoy or bring joy to my life and happiness to people around me without me feeling like I have to do something. I just want to be me and enjoy myself. And if I'm not making people around me feel good, well, they need to go somewhere. I'm not going to change anymore. And that's the greatest thing about getting old. We see it in the movies about the grumpy old men and everything. And the only difference between a grumpy old man and you is that we're so old, we no longer worry about saying what we're thinking. The grumpy old men have been thinking those thoughts their whole lives, and they finally feel free enough.
Well, you don't seem very grumpy.
Well, no, I got most of that out of my way, but it was a revelation for me, maybe definitely within the last 5 years. I realized that, I'm not going to do any more big ocean sailing trips. I'm not going to write a great American novel. Essentially, I've done everything I'm going to do. The podcast, the salon, is really the pinnacle of my life, and I'm going to keep doing that. But I am what I am, like Popeye used to say. I'm. There's nothing more for me to prove to anybody, and I think part of that has come from the fact that all my life I wanted to make my mother, my father, my grandparents, my aunt, and my brother happy, and they're all dead and gone now. Everybody that I'd spent my life trying to impress, they're gone. And so I don't have anybody that I have a need to impress anymore. And so it's very relaxing, actually. It's not sad. It's just what is. And you get to a point where you say, you can breathe easy, and that's what it's going to be. And done the best I could at the time. I wish I'd known what I know now way back from the beginning, and I would have done a lot of things differently. But at the time, I did what I could.
Well, what would you do differently? I mean, you're just saying you would have maybe tried that mindset on a little earlier.
Oh, the big thing. I grew up in lower middle class or upper poor class family. My dad didn't have a car, and that was embarrassing. And we didn't have TV until I was in 6th or 7th grade, something like that.
Where'd you grow up?
Just outside of Chicago, Elgin, Illinois. And so, I grew up, I had a mother, though, who she had gone through a girls' finishing school for high school because her cousin was the Mother Superior's Catholic school, and my mother got a piano scholarship to play to the school. So she was very refined and had new manners and taught me table manners and stuff. So I always wanted to become part of the upper class. And there is such a class structure in this country. I made it pretty far. I made my way to Notre Dame. I hobnobbed with the rich kids. I went to law school at the University of Houston. I had to have a tuxedo because we're taking all the debutantes out. And, I was a multimillionaire by the time I was 40. I was really getting there. And then I realized after I started taking psychedelics that these people liked me because I had money and I threw it around. Mm-hmm. But I was never one of them. I was never accepted. I would never be good enough for them. I could have enough money, but I wasn't their class. And so I became resentful for a while. And then I realized that, I need to realize that I'm just a working class stiff. And these are my people. And I'm more of a Bukowski than a Huxley. But it's taken me a long time to get here, because I was striving since a kid trying to prove that I was as good as the people who were born rich, and that's just never going to happen. And now I'm glad I went through that arc, because I did have a lot of stuff at one time, and I realized that it not only was not bringing me happiness, it wasn't achieving what I wanted, and that is to be accepted for just being me. And
right.
And that's what I'm doing now. I'm not. If people don't like my podcast, they don't have to listen to it. It's not like I can just be me. And
and also
that way.
Achievement, like you're saying, sometimes can be a bit of a fog in life, right? I mean, that is a tricky game. I think, especially now, maybe that's going back to social media. That's one of the issues with it, is that everyone's their own PR agent. And everything's quantifiable. Everything's about numbers. How many numbers everything has, how many likes, how many followers. And that can really screw with your head, let alone what you're trying to do in life. And it becomes this this false game that really goes nowhere. It's a hamster wheel where eventually you can either find that inner sense of knowing and strength, because there really isn't anything else.
Well, did you see that that story on Black Mirror about social media?
Well, I've seen Black Mirror, but I don't know what story you're talking about.
The one where their lives were controlled by getting likes, and if
oh yeah, that one is fantastic. Nosedive.
Well, that is underway in China right now. There are over 200 million people in the Chinese experience like that, and if you don't have a high enough social score, you can't get on the bus.
I did see that. That was the true manifest of that storyline. That blew my mind.
Yeah. It's you know, it's easy to see how somebody could slip into something like that.
It is and it isn't, but it's sort of like the movie Her, Her, that came out a few years back, where the guy, everyone has what we have now, a phone, but it becomes artificially intelligent. That's the new software, and he falls in love with his artificial intelligent his phone, and I don't know. It's just like, come on. I mean, both of us grew up at a time where we didn't have the internet, and here we are. We didn't even have iPhones that long ago. What was it, 10 years, 11 years ago?
10 years.
And the way that's transformed this planet like a bolt of lightning is unfathomable. It really is. And I don't even think anyone knows what the hell is going on and what this is doing.
I'll tell you, I think there are 3 major inventions that are totally transforming humanity. The first was the printing press. The second was the World Wide Web. And the third is blockchain technology. And the reason I say that is everything is going to go to the blockchain. You know, deeds, records, you know, law, everything is going to go out there. And the banks are all, you know, it's the biggest research and development projects around the world, with banks and governments even, stock brokerages. But once the blockchain is essentially algorithms. There's a really good book called Homo Deus, and it was written by the guy that wrote Sapien, that was on the bestseller list a few years ago. Homo Deus is an important book if you want to see where things are going. And in just probably 15 years or 20 at the most, 80% of the jobs in this country are going to be automated. What are those people going to do? And the automation is AI. It's algorithms that control everything. And when things get into the blockchain and it's all done by algorithms and it's taken out of our hands, and then a real AI, an intelligent batch of algorithms that start communicating with one another, we're going to have to find a niche for our human societies. I mean, we're at a beginning of something really weird. You know, it's like the horizon event of some kind, or I am just as goofy as Terence McKenna was when he was talking about 2012. You know, but I would advise you to pay attention to algorithms, AI, and blockchain.
Well, what was it? What did Terence say? I'll pay attention to AI, and if anyone tells me they just came online, the first thing I do is hide. You know? Just be like, before this, what's happening? You know.
See, there's a big difference between artificial intelligence and artificial consciousness.
Oh, I'm not a singularitarian person that thinks we're ever going, you can't do such a thing, but I do think we could mimic it to the point where you would know the difference.
Because, and your example of the phone is a starting point, because AI is going to get so into your life that if you start feeling ill, it will schedule a doctor's appointment for you, but because it knows your DNA and your metabolism, it's going to prevent you from buying foods that are bad for you. You know? Yeah,
essentially that AI would be your front office doctor. You wouldn't even get to a person until like you've gotten past the needs of because it'd be faster, cheaper, and they'd say the same thing to you. Like, we got your stats, we did the lab test with your finger on that, and here's what we need to do, you know. Amazon's bringing your prescription by 6 p.m. tonight. Yeah.
My drone, yeah,
take your pills. Yeah. The phone will tell you. Yeah, but it's a quick question about blockchain. Like, you know, most people don't understand what that is, and I probably only understand it about 80% myself. I mean, could you give a quick definition of the technology?
It's a way to eliminate what a trusted third party. So if you're going to sell me your car, I want to give my money to a third party, and you give the deed to the third party. And when you have both the money and it clears and the deed is good, you give me the deed. He gives me the deed.
Like PayPal or a bank.
Yeah. So you eliminate that so people deal directly. So when I want to buy a car from you, I say, okay, I hold my phone up and I say, here's my money coming into you. And instantly the deed comes back to me and our transaction's done. We don't need anybody in the middle.
But that seems like that would decentralize things in a way that would take power structures power away. Why they would not want this?
They don't understand it yet. and everybody's looking at their own. The banks see it as a way to save money and make more money. Mm-hmm. And everybody's seeing this as opportunities. But what they're not seeing is the societal change that's going to take place. There are some people that are talking about that for sure.
Can't you use it anonymously and also use it in an encrypted way? Like information can travel. Because I saw an article just yesterday by an artist named Imogen Heap who is talking about using blockchain to attach to songs so that everyone can get paid royalty-wise no matter where that song goes. Because right now it's very difficult to get the right information about royalty splits. It's very complicated around the world. And she is suggesting this technology would be a pretty good fix.
I'm sure it will because it's first of all, the information isn't in one place. It's in 1,000 places. Mm. And all of these people agree that when this song is played, that person playing it has to send some money to you, and all that's going to take place behind the scenes, but there's no way to shut it down. There's no server you can turn off. There's nobody you can bribe. It's all programmed. It's all
there are no fees involved? Like you can do micropayments?
You have to have fees to pay for the people who are running all the computers. And that's what mining is all about. You've heard about mining. And
yeah, I was just going to ask you if you're a Bitcoin miner.
Oh, no. Bitcoin miners need, 100,000 square foot warehouse, 20 feet high, filled with computers. I started accepting Bitcoin in 2013, and I've just kept everything that's come to me. And so I've got almost 5.5 Bitcoin that I'm just sitting on. And maybe one day it'll help me pay the rent, which keeps going up here in Southern California.
Yeah. Did you ever have any of those fires near you?
Oh, yeah. The last one, we had them in the county. The last serious one we had was 2014. But, the San Diego County area has 11 major firefighting organizations, mm-hmm. and there is no central body over them, and yet they come together and work with precision. And San Diego County has per area the largest military footprint of any comparable area in the world.
No kidding. You got the Navy down there, right?
The biggest Navy base on the West Coast. You've got the Marine base. You've got a Navy Air Base. The drones are made here. It's a huge defense industry here. A lot of the big defense companies here. There used to be a couple of spy companies heading here, Qubit and Qual, and I'll think of them later. But they've moved into the Beltway now. But everybody here in this county that's not involved in tourism is either military or ex-military in some kind of a defense thing. So it's a pretty conservative area, and it's everybody's accepted. I got a long ponytail. I go to the gym every week a few times, and nobody ever hassles me. A couple of the old Notre Dame guys know that I'm a Notre Dame guy, and they all have the crew cuts that have hair left. And but nobody hassles. I go to the Notre Dame club meetings here for the senior Notre Dame set, 55 and over, and there's one other guy with a ponytail. Actually, he's the surfer, nice. About my age. But people are well accepted out here. They wouldn't want to follow my beliefs or anything, but it's a good place to live that way. And so when fires come, people really cooperate. During the 2007, there were 500,000 people evacuated during that huge fire. And Qualcomm Stadium was one of the points where people went. And the line of cars going into the stadium to drop off food and clothing, you saw all kinds you saw limousines and Rollses and expensive cars. I mean, people really came together here. So it's a good community, and Caucasians are less than 50%. So it's a fairly well mixed community. A lot of Mexican Americans and Spanish speaking, but also a lot of races here. So it's a good little place to raise a family if you're rich.
Yeah, if you got the money for the housing, right?
Oh, it's so expensive. I think, most of us renters are paying like 60% of our income for housing. But the only reason we're here is we've got these two granddaughters that are, 9 and 13. And so we're a mile away from them and involved in their lives. So it's
you guys have a nice spot. Yeah.
It's worth paying for that.
Yeah, definitely have a nice spot.
Yeah.
Well, man, you've created quite a legacy for yourself. I'm excited that the Psychedelic Salon's probably one of the longest running podcasts. Yeah,
we're going to be in the top 100 probably, because there weren't too many back then, but that are still going. So I'm happy, and it's a hobby, that I've never. I don't use Google Ads on the site or anything. I don't have those little buttons where you can like it or social media connections and. John Gilmore, who was co-founder of the EFF, Electronic Freedom Foundation, or Frontier Foundation, I've podcast several of his talks at Palenque Norte, and he helped me clean up the site to make sure that it's essentially not tracking people.
Right.
So, or couldn't be reverse tracked and all. So anyhow, I've got the site pretty well cleaned up, and I get enough donations that it's paying for itself. And now I'm doing this writing project, and I have 81 patrons who are giving me a couple bucks a piece a month, and life is good.
I get you some more.
I don't really have any regrets about losing the millions that I had at one time, because then if I still had stocks and stuff like that, I'd be worried about the damn stock market.
Well, you spent it. Yeah, great.
I own a 8-9-year-old Honda Fit. That's the only car we have. We're renting. Been on month to month for 8 years. So no credit card debt, living on Social Security and a few other little things, odds and ends. And so I never thought that I could be so happy with so little. And,
well, Lorenzo, I look at you and I see you as a rich man. So,
I am. I truly am.
You really are. Well, hey, where can I just get your places we can find you, like the Psychedelic Salon, yourself, your book?
Yeah, just go to psychedelicsalon.com. That's probably the best place. And on there, or I'll tell you another one. You can get a free copy of my book. My last book I put up in the public domain. You can download a PDF copy, and that's at lorenzohagerty.com, which is a site that's got a bunch of links on the front of it. It's just a brochure pipe, but /free books, and you can download the book there, and hope you enjoy it.
Is your Genesis generation on there?
I'm going to be putting it up there hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I've got a little work I have to do, and when I free that up, I'm going to put the Genesis generation up there too.
The audiobook or the...
I'm going to do both the audio and a PDF copy.
Yeah, I remember hearing the audiobook. It was great.
But when I finally printed it in paperback, I did a big revision of it, and the prologue and final chapter are different. So it's kind of a different book now a little bit.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I'll put the PDF up there. It'll be up there in a couple of weeks, and you can download a copy. Print and I'm putting these things in the public domain so you can print out copies and sell them. No royalties required.
Right on. I dig it. Awesome, man. I really appreciate making some time for me and getting a chance to connect with you again. It's always good.
It's been fun, and we'll have to do it again here when we go down the road a little further and have some more stories to tell.
Yeah, and maybe we'll cross paths now that you're out at these festivals again. Maybe I'll be at the Imagine
one conference.
That one's, they've asked me to come before. Maybe it'll align in the future. So
we'll connect. We'll connect for sure, Trevor. Good to see you again.
You too, man. Say hi to your wife. It's been lovely.
Namaste.
Thank you. Well, there it is, another episode of 10 Laws with East Forest. Thank you so much to listening. Thank you to Lorenzo Hagerty. If you like this podcast, please do give it 5 stars on iTunes. Go to iTunes.com and give us a good review. This music you're hearing is not released anywhere. It's sort of just some more piano music, a little short 1 minute, licensing, outros, things like that. But if you do like this, it's pretty darn similar to my album Held, which you can find through 1631 Recordings. And there's a link to that through my own music through eastforest.org, or you can find that anywhere, out there that you enjoy music. You can always say hello at eastforest.org and keep walking your walk. Don't take any shit, but if you do it with grace.